In this video, we are going to learn how to use backstitch for text. So we're going to be stitching in crease. Now, if you've been going through all the videos for our practice kit, you might have already stitched a bind and now you're at the in crease portion and you're wondering, where did all the stitching go? I had already recorded this video and I was not happy with the outcome. So I'm here to record it again so that I could have an accurate tutorial to show you how to use the backstitch in text. So let's get started. Text really can be very intimidating for people, and honestly it was intimidating for me for many years, and it took a lot of practice before I felt really comfortable with text. And even now, as you can see from the fact that I'm having to re-record this video, that there are times I still make mistakes with it. But I want to give you some tips and tricks on how to do this well so that it doesn't frustrate you as much as it frustrated me from the beginning. So the first tip I want to share with you is finding your pattern. I really like to find my pattern so that I can try and keep a cohesive stitch throughout. So for example, with this letter I, I'm going to make 3 vertical stitches going up on the I, and I want to repeat that in any vertical letter that I come across. So this first vertical letter in the N, I'm going to do the exact same 3 stitches, the same for the sideways line, the same for the next vertical line, and so forth. It will change a little bit when you get to curved letters, but by keeping the cohesion for the other letters, it's going to make it all blend very well together. Now the second tip is very similar to the satin stitch, is you always want your text to be pulling in the same direction. So I'm going to try and always start, when possible, my floss at the bottom of the letter and pull it up. That way I'm always pulling my floss and my fabric in turn in the same direction. So let's get started so that you can see the process. So I'm going to start at the bottom of my I here. I'm going to make my first back stitch, and similar to the back split stitch, your stitches are going to be a little bit smaller than they were in your original back stitch that you did up here. You have to adjust your sizing of your stitches to fit the letters. So I have my first stitch, my second stitch, and then my third stitch. All right, so now I want to repeat these same 3 stitches roughly in the same spot for this N. So I'm going to come over to the N, again starting at the bottom. And I'm going to find out where I'm going to go down at by following this right here. So I'm going to try and make sure I'm at the equal distance as the first time I made it. And keep going. Now with this sideways line, I'm going to want to continue with the 3 stitches, but I'm not going to be able to follow them at the exact same spacing as over here. But as long as you get 3 stitches roughly the same size, it's going to still help with that cohesion throughout. Another tip is when these angled lines meet a vertical line, it is nice to be able to kind of tuck that stitch under a little. So I'm going to use my needle and kind of run it under this back stitch at the very top so that it can hopefully lay a little bit flatter. If I was to put the stitch right at the top here, then it would be a little more bulky. All right, so now I'm going to follow my same pattern as I did over here for the vertical line. I am, for this instance, starting a little bit above this bottom line because I just came down at this spot. So if I was to try and come back up at that same spot, I might end up pulling out the stitch. And again, I'm going to slip this under a little. So now I'm going over to the C. The C we cannot follow our same pattern with. We cannot complete this in 3 stitches, but we have learned roughly how big our stitches need to be by looking at this pattern from our word in. So I'm going to go over to the C, and I'm going to try and keep those stitches a very similar size. One of the important things about stitching text is that if you make a stitch and right away you see that it just doesn't look right, it's not going to later look right. Take it out in that moment and start again. Fixing text after the fact is much harder than if you just go ahead and fix it while you're in the middle of stitching. Now, one quick note about rounded letters like this is I have learned that there is a little bit of a pattern in it, and if you can find it, then it will help you later with other rounded letters. And it's very similar to analog looking 0. So if you think of a flat bottom, a side angled line here, and an angled line here, this is where drawing it on a piece of paper would probably be more helpful. Let me do that. So this is what I mean, a little give or take. It might take a few more stitches, but with a curved letter, it tends to be flat on the bottom, 2 sideways stitches, and then you go up a little bit, sideways stitches, another flat, either top portion. So just look for that pattern in your mind, and if you can see it, then just follow that pattern. That might sound a little crazy to you right now, but the more you stitch text, the more it will make sense. So for example, I just did my sideways stitch here on the C. Now the top of it is going to be a little more flat, and then I'll do another sideways stitch to get that very last stitch on the C. All right, so we're back at a vertical letter. I'm going to stitch the first line in my H with 3 stitches. Again, trying to follow the same pattern as the very first letter I did. And when I have letters like an H and an A that have a horizontal right in the middle of it, I like to stitch that right after the first line I do. So I'm going to stitch this first vertical line, and then I'm going to do that horizontal line. And then I'll continue with the second vertical line. So this H could be, it could be 1 or 2 stitches. I think I'm going to break it up into 2 stitches. They'll be a little bit smaller than any of the other back stitches, but I feel like the 1 stitch would make it just a little bit too long. All right, now we're at this R, which is a little bit of the pattern and a little bit not of the pattern. So we're going to follow the pattern on the vertical line, then we're going to go and do the curve and do this little offshoot of the R. This, because it's not the full length of our pattern, will probably only require about 2 stitches. And there you have it. That is how you use the back stitch inside of text. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more embroidery tutorials.